In America, everyone counts, and the 2020 census is how that great promise is kept. Respond today online, by phone, or by mail, and help inform hundreds of billions in funding for education, health programs, and more. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov. This is the tweet the NBA sent out an hour ago. The NBA and the NBPA today announced that in light of the Milwaukee Bucks' decision to not take the floor today for Game 5 against the Orlando Magic, today's 3 games, Milwaukee, Orlando, Houston, OKC, and LA Lakers and Portland, have been postponed. Game 5 of each series will be rescheduled. Joining us right now is Vincent Goodwill, senior NBA writer for Yahoo Sports, Howard Bryant, journalist with ESPN. Howard, I'll start with you. The reason that Doc Rivers' video last night was so powerful, now followed up by this action of the Milwaukee Bucks, is Doc Rivers knows this personally. In 1997, his home in San Antonio was burned to the ground as a result of a racist act.
Yeah, I mean, no question. I mean, I think that where we're at right now, there's just no question that the country's coming apart. And we've been talking about this for months, and a lot of us have been talking about this for years. If you go back to Trayvon, this generation has been talking about this for almost a decade. And I think that you are at a spot where people have been asking, well, are you going to be about it? And when you have this reset after George Floyd, you have Black Lives Matter painted on the court. And people say, well, you know, this feels like a real embarrassment for the NBA. I can't think of a more appropriate time for them not to play. If any of this matters, if any of this is beyond sloganeering, this is the moment. This is the time where you say, we actually need to make some form of statement. And I think, Roland, you and I talked about this for years. This is what the NBA avoided over Donald Sterling, an actual playoff boycott. This is what was avoided during the restart, where a lot of players were saying we shouldn't play, like George Hill of the Bucks. And now you've reached a point where you can't avoid it anymore. It's right here.
Vincent, so many people were saying, can we just get back to sports and get away from all this stuff, all the protests, the George Floyd in the wake of that? Can we get away from all the politics? But these are black athletes joined by white partners and allies who are saying, no, we can't step out on that court after what we just witnessed take place in Kenosha, Wisconsin, located 40 miles from Milwaukee. This reminds me when Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by George Zimmerman in 2012. Folks forget Sanford is not far from Orlando. And the reality is I was one of the people, Vincent, who was critical of the Orlando Magic players for not doing a damn thing. And I remember I was one of the folks who was like talking about it and pushing it. And I was tweeting LeBron and tweeting Dwayne Wade and hitting them on DM saying, yo, man, here's the moment. The kids from Miami. And then they released that photo of all of them as players in hoodies. This is where athletes are saying we're not just going to shut up and dribble.
Yeah, I think the levees of this type of racism, we can say that it's been going on for a long time, and now it's finally broken. Whether it's social media or the advent of camera phones, this generation is so much more used to using their voices and demanding more. Like we're always reminded of the MLK quote about the moral arc of the universe bends toward justice, but its reach is long. The problem is white folks know that too, and they keep leaning on that. And this generation is looking and saying, wait, the Civil Rights Act of 1965 are basically our grandparents now, and we haven't gotten far enough. We're going to keep pushing it. We're going to try a new play from this playbook. And I don't know if people have been ready for this, but I think it's been building for quite a long time, Roland. I don't even know if the players know what the next step is. I don't know if they should know what the next step is, but they've leveraged all the power that they have. And here's the other thing that people do not realize. When you're poor, power is a construct above your head. You have no access to power. When you get a little bit of money, you understand how power works, even though you don't have access to power if you're black. So they know what this means. They know that this is basically all of their leverage pushed to the center of the table to show people that they are serious. And just the act of it alone, who knows what happens tomorrow or through the weekend. But the fact that they've leveraged everything and they've told America, you need a timeout, I think is admirable.
Let's also keep in mind, Howard, you are a sports historian. this is not the first time some players have boycotted a game. 1961, several players of the Boston Celtics boycotted a game in Lexington, Kentucky because of how they were treated. Bill Russell, Casey Jones, Satch Sanders, Sam Jones, and Al Butler, because of how Sanders and Sam Jones were refused service in a coffee shop at the team's hotel. And then, according to this story in the Boston Globe, Red Auerbach, the head coach, accepted his players' protest and drove the five to the airport.
Yeah, no question. And let's also not forget something else, that today is the anniversary of Colin Kaepernick taking his knee 4 years ago. And you do have a generational thing here where if you are of a certain age, you're reminded of of the impact that players have. If you're not, then people sort of wonder, what is all this going to mean? What's it all going to do? And what we're finding out is you're finding out the impact of collective action. That the Milwaukee Brewers baseball chose not to play tonight. And that sport is 7.7% black. So this is this moment. We're talking about this. We saw this when George Floyd was killed, and we saw all these corporations get involved and say that they were on board and that this mattered and they were going to take this seriously. And now you see something like this happening, and you realize that slowly, you're beginning to see more collective action. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in terms of the diplomacy that's taking place with the NBA right now, because is this a one-game thing? Is it two? Is it a week? What is taking place right now, and what conversations are taking place? Because we know of this with the National Football League. The first impulse of the NFL would be to crack down. So I'm really going to be interested in seeing the conversation between power and access, how that plays out, and when the NBA realizes, or if the NBA realizes that partnership with the players is still the way to go. It's very, very difficult for the NBA right now to say that all of this matters and then not back the players. Everyone's got to be in this together right now, or it undermines everything that we've seen for the last 8 weeks.
And, of course, Vincent, you've got one of the members of the Dallas Cowboys who said he is going to take a knee. Jerry Jones is trying to get him not to do it. He's trying to say, hey, how about if you kneel before the national anthem and stand up for it? Guys like Jerry Jones, big-time Donald Trump supporters, big-time Republicans, are not listening to players. And here we are, as Howard said, 4 years after Colin Kaepernick, and the tide has shifted. A majority of Americans agree with Colin Kaepernick taking that knee. You have people who are waking up, and to go back to the point about the NBA, people got to remember, you had a couple of NBA players who got into it with a cop. One of them had his leg broken by the NYPD. And so when people start saying,
Roland,
go ahead, Howard.
Don't forget that Sterling Brown was a member of the Milwaukee Bucks when the police beat him up.
Right.
They know this firsthand.
Right. So when you hear people say, oh, y'all are rich athletes, when you have idiots like Jason Whitlock, oh, this doesn't affect you. No, these players are saying we might be black, but we are affected, and so are our brothers and our cousins and our nephews.
Well, here's the thing, Roland. America doesn't want to hear from poor black folks. They don't want to hear from rich black folks. What type of black people do they want to hear from? Let us know, because we'll actually show up whatever demographic of black people, whether it be athletes, successful people, the lower rung, whatever you want to call it. We'll show up and be there when when y'all want to hear from us. The thing is, they don't want to hear from us. The thing is, we shouldn't be paying attention to bad faith actors like Jason Whitlock or people who just want to use diversionary tactics to turn the conversation into something that is not, whether it's China or black-on-black crime or whatever else the case may be. Whenever it's time to have a discussion about police brutality sanctioned by the state against African Americans, against black Americans, then everybody wants to bring up all this other stuff. Let's keep the focus on where it is. And yeah, it is time for the Jerry Joneses of the world, the big-time right-wing guys who we know where he stands. Don't go out there and do something like he did 2 years ago, was it, Howard, where on Monday Night Football, where he kneeled with his players before the anthem and some show of unity that was actually just a demonstration and not anything of substance. Go out there and truly stand behind your players, or if you're the Dallas Cowboy players, defy the owner who signs your paycheck and stand with what your skin color says you should.
Final comment, Howard Bryant.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you look at what's taking place all across the board here, this is what everyone asked for, right? You ask for players to be involved. You ask for players to take a risk. We ask for players to do something, to be about something more than simply wearing a T-shirt. And you're starting to see this. And I think that what I'm really impressed by is the fact that the players could have tried to negotiate with Adam Silver. This time they did a conscientious strike and they said, we're not playing. And they're actually leading. And let's also not forget the WNBA is contemplating doing the same. It's a collective action.
Absolutely. Howard, Bryant, Vincent Goodwill, gentlemen, I certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
All right, I want to go back to my panel here. Janelle, I want to start with you. You look at the WNBA. They were very clear in terms of those players speaking out against Black Lives Matter. You had Senator Kelly Loeffler, co-owner of the Atlanta Dream, who was critical of them, critical of the WNBA. Now you have these players here. Well, here's the deal. Are these people still human beings? Can they not use their voices to protest? Your take on not only the Bucks players doing this, along with the Magic, the Rockets, the Thunder, the Lakers in Portland, but also the Milwaukee Brewers. They also made it clear. One of their closers said, we simply could not be silent. We must take a stand on this. These are athletes who are making it perfectly clear. We simply will not just shut up and dribble the basketball. All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. As our community comes together to support the fight against racial injustice, I want to take a second to talk about one thing we can do to ensure our voices are heard. Not tomorrow, but now. Have your voices heard in terms of what kind of future we want by taking the 2020 census today at 2020census.gov? Now, folks, let me help you out. The census is a count of everyone living in the country. It happens once every 10 years. It is mandated by the U.S. Constitution. The thing that's important is that the census informs funding, billions of dollars, how they are spent in our communities every single year. I grew up in Clinton Park in Houston, Texas, and we wanted new parks and roads and a senior citizen center. Well, the census helps inform all of that and where funding goes. It also determines how many seats your state will get in the U.S. House of Representatives. Young black men and young children of color are historically undercounted, which means a potential loss of funding for services that helps our community. Folks, we have the power to change that. We have the power to help determine where hundreds of billions in federal funding go each year for the next 10 years. Funding that can impact our community, our neighborhoods, and our families and friends. Folks, responses are 100% confidential and can't be shared with your landlord, law enforcement, or any government agency. So please take the 2020 census today. Shape your future. Start at 2020census.gov.